Our mission is to build a future in which people and nature both flourish. And so basically that boils down to keeping the planet intact. And so we do everything from helping governments create big park systems, to changing demand for ivory in China, to driving new forms of regulation on climate change, science-based targets with the biggest businesses on Earth, and then finding ways for communities to find their voice in different, really marginalized parts of the world. My career path is evidence that it doesn't have to be linear, and you can make mistakes along the way. But when I was a senior in college, I wrote my thesis on a moment in the civil rights history when these new leaders in New York City turned their institutions upside down and made them engines for addressing discrimination. It was a really cool moment. And what I noted is more often than not, those leaders had a business background. And so I thought it would be good to go into business. I interviewed for these leadership training programs and got one with Procter & Gamble, where my first job was bringing Pringles back from the dead. And I did that for a while until I realized that's not where my heart was. And I went on to work for a startup, and then I went to Harvard Business School. And while I was in HBS, I thought a lot about what do I want to do when I get out. And the thing that I yearned for was a way to blend business and the environment and bring those tools to do what those leaders did in New York City. And at the time, this is 1988, the internet had just kind of popped onto the scene. And I tried to start a business with somebody that would deliver to mothers with newborn kids products that were good for their kids and good for the environment. And all the mothers had to do was to go online and Google what they wanted. Google didn't exist then. And then it would be delivered. And we ran into a business snag, which was the only way we had of delivering stuff to people's homes was using laundromats, which at the time, back in the day, there was these laundromats or rather cleaning services would have these trucks that would deliver cloth diapers and shirts to people's homes. And it turned out they were all owned by the Boston Mafia. And so that was not very promising. And my business partner said, hey, I'm interviewing for a job on the side and you'd be better at it. And he said, you should go in and take my place. And he did. And I did, and I interviewed for that, and it was running the Boston office of the Nature Conservancy. So I spent 15 years at TNC doing land deals in New England, all over Latin America. I built a chunk of their science program. I was head of strategy twice. And then I worked on this big partnership with WWF. And in the middle of that partnership, the CEO of WWF asked me to have lunch. And the rest is history. That's how I ended up where I am. Well, I've made some mistakes in terms of, jobs that I took, where I actually took something on, applied for a job, got it, and learned that the people I worked with weren't that great. And it's the sinking feeling you get when you're trapped in a place. The people you work with don't really want you to be successful, and you've got to leave. And I always say to people, you don't have to make perfect choices in your life. What you do need to do is take risks, and when you're in a bad place, have the wherewithal to make a change. That's like one of the most important skills. So that was a mistake. The other mistake I had is when I first got the job at TNC. I was a young, freshly minted Harvard MBA. I thought I knew exactly what needed to be done. And there were moments when I turned around and people were not following me. And they were not following me because I didn't take the time to listen to them. And I learned the hard way that the most essential thing that you need to learn to do in your career is listening to other people. That leadership is not about telling people what to do. Leadership is basically taking the time to listen and learn from the people around you and then chart a course together, or at least a course in which people feel like they were part of the process. And more recently, I headed up the strategic planning process for WWF, which has 7,000 staff around the world in 100 different countries. And we did it in 3 months, and it involved listening intensively, throwing something out there, listening. And the best compliment I had at the end of the day when we all decided to move in this direction was one of my colleagues from Africa said, "I can see my voice in the final product." If you're going to talk to people and work with people and listen and work through differences, think about your tone of voice, because that really makes a difference. It changes the ions in the room. And that was an unexpected conversation this morning, and I think it's really true. You know, there are, if you're a really good institution, you're diverse, you're inclusive of all kinds of viewpoints, and that makes you much richer in terms of creativity, but also you're more sustainable as an institution. And so to really think about what's the space you create for people, for their voices to be heard, but if it's your voice, think about the tone you use. So you're not talking at people, but you're really sympathetic. What you would think that the thing that I would love most about my job is those moments when I've been able to collar a tiger, or come nose to nose with a polar bear, or go diving in the Galapagos and have penguins swimming between my legs. I mean, those are all really cool. But the moments I like the most is when I'm part of a group of people who've devoted their lives to making something happen. And I've been able to help either bring the resources or the openings to make something happen that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And for 5 years, we've been working with the government of Peru to safeguard this whole area at the headwaters of the Amazon. And it's unbelievably rich in terms of biodiversity. It's unbelievably rich in terms of cultures and languages of indigenous groups. And we went through 4 different governments in 5 years in Peru, up and down, up and down, up and down. And through all that, this group of individuals worked on this, on the financing, the science, the politics and everything else. And we finally brought it to a closing. It was May 24th, which is my birthday. I flew down there. We went into the headwaters of the Amazon on the edge of this mixed-use reserve. And everybody gave speeches in Spanish. And we signed this formal document. And that moment included securing land titling for 61 different communities, securing a system of reserves that was at least 16% of that part of Peru. And the unfettered joy that was on people's faces was unbelievable. And at the end of the whole thing, on the edge of this tributary of the Amazon, they brought out this birthday cake for me. And it turned out they'd sent 2 cakes because they knew one would be destroyed in transit. And so they brought out the surviving cake, and we all blew out the candles and celebrated what had happened. And that was pretty cool. Making stuff happen with great people, that's what I love. You know, when I started out, I wish I had known that it's better to be patient and speak your mind about the stuff you care about, rather than trying to be something that you aren't, to try to fit in. Because I started out asking my parents, so where do you think I ought to start my career? And asking their friends, where do you think I ought to start my career? And so I got sucked into the vortex of all the big training programs and doing things that would look good for my resume, which, it's not inconsequential. But I think what matters more is figuring out what you really think about, care about, and talking about that, even if it means watching those job fairs come and go with jobs you're not really interested in, and being patient and creative in finding the job that's right for you, rather than just passively waiting for people to come hire you for the job that's right for them. That, I wish I knew that. And the other thing I wish I knew was the importance of having fun. You know, the people who take their job so seriously, and like, it's really profoundly important to have fun no matter what you're doing. People will walk over hot coals to get something done, particularly if they care about it, but also if they're having fun along the way. I mean, life's too short to just be serious all the time. So I wish I'd known then, early on, because those are the kind of places where you want to work, and it's also the kind of jobs you either want to have or the kind of jobs you want to create. Networking is kind of a horrible word for going around and talking to people who are interesting. And I think if you take advantage of the resources that CC has, the alums, also, you know, this is the one moment where actually your parents and their friends can be useful to go out and just take the time to use whatever relationships you have to go meet new people and just listen, ask them questions about what makes them tick and what kind of jobs they have. Often they'll give you the name of somebody else, the person you just met for the first time, and they're willing to do that. To take the time to do that. The other is make your own decision, not your parents. I think there is within all of us kind of this desire to listen to our parents, please our parents. It's natural. And, you know, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But at the moment where you pick your job, pick the job that makes sure it's your choice and not a choice you're making to fulfill somebody else's dream. And the other is think about the people you're going to work with. You know, you learn a lot in college from the research you do, the books you read, the projects you have, but I found in my own career that watching other people navigate things, and in addition to making my own spectacular mistakes, is the way to really learn. That's how you learn. And really think about who you're going to be with and around and work for. That matters more than anything. I'd rather dig clams with the most amazing people in the world than do something noble with a bunch of turkeys. My dad told me when you think about your career, you should make sure that you're always learning and you're serving something greater than you are. And I think he's halfway there. I think those are really important things to consider, but the other two things are who you work with matters a lot. And if you're working with great people and you're getting stuff done together, that is the dream job.